Well, hello, Morgan. I think it's Friday.
I think it's Friday. We have a live show? What?
And
That's not
and
allowed.
a
And?
whole bunch of experiments that are going to save a whole bunch of people, whether you're in
Oh,
sales, demand marketing, or an entrepreneur. We could learn a thing or two about even the new LinkedIn algorithm change. This will
yeah.
be
There's been
fun.
some changes these last couple weeks, so we're going to dive into today. So, hello to everyone joining us. Thank you for being here. Happy Friday. If you're here, drop a hi. Hello, Lydia, already. Hello to
Hey,
everyone else
Lydia.
joining us. Um, please drop a hello. Now, the funny thing is, I say that as a host of a live show, saying, hey, drop in a hi. If I ever attended a live show, I don't know if I'd drop in a hi because I'm like, yeah, whatever, these guys. I'm serious. Say hi. We want to see
Hey,
you. Hey,
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey. We're so excited that you're here. This is a crucial topic, I think, Nick. It gets talked about a lot. Um, but I also think it gets talked about a lot as sort of a general idea. Like, oh, you should create content. Oh, you need a content strategy. You need pillars of content. And like as a content strategist, yeah, you basically do. Hi, Karen. Hi, Sergi. Hi, David. The um, the reality is today's session is a power hour. It's the name of our show. This is a workshop. This is your workshop. So as we go through this stuff, ask questions. What's on your mind when it comes to creating content? We obviously have some stuff we want to share from our experiments over these last many months creating content on LinkedIn. And even these past few weeks, we have some experiments. The but this is your time as well to ask questions to us around this topic. So, oh gosh, we have some new. Hello, Brenda. Hey, Andrea. Nice to see you. I believe Casper. It's not morning where you are, but that's great. Hi, Sam. Also not morning in Dublin. Thanks for joining, and
Yeah.
everybody else who's here.
And
So excited to
anybody
have
that's
everyone.
new, just to kind of like a quick
Oh
lowdown of
yes,
how this
go ahead.
works. We have a theme every time on these power hours that we dive in. And so we have a couple topics that we like to discuss. And it's really based on you guys. The more questions we get, or the more interest we get in the comments, the deeper we'll go. So it's really
hmm
based on you.
hmm
If we get less comments, we're just going to go and run.
We can talk for an hour. Don't worry. I mean,
It's the name of the game.
indeed. All right. So, where I wanted to start today, Nick,
Hmm.
were three principles of content creation on LinkedIn. Okay. Because the
Okay.
title of today's Power Hour was creating content for LinkedIn social selling. And so I thought, what are the fundamental things I wish I knew when I got started creating content out here? Number one is content is a tool. It is not the whole strategy. You can do so much on LinkedIn. You can connect with people. You can attend events like these. Hi everyone. You can comment. You can post videos, and of course, you can post content. You can research people. You can find profiles. You can drive conversations off the platform. You can use Sales Nav to build account lists and lead lists. I mean, you could. This is a huge platform with such massive opportunities. Content is just a tool. It is not the entire strategy. And this relates too to the second principle, which is commenting is content creation. So, principle one is content's just a tool, it's not everything that you do on here. Principle two is commenting is content creation. I get all psyched out about this. Maybe you do too, Nick. But the terror of the blank page, right? You're like, "Oh my god, what should I post?" Okay? Comment, comment, comment. Just comment. That's content creation. I actually ran an experiment about this week, Nick.
Yeah,
Um,
crazy results too.
so we've recommended in past live shows for those of you who are new here to do 5 to 10 comments a day on especially the accounts that you would like to sell to, or the accounts that you would like to connect to, or the influencer accounts that they follow, so you stay in front of your audience. What I decided to do this week compared to the last 2 weeks was I would still post content. I'd post my images, my videos, my text posts, but I wouldn't comment. What happened? Well, number one, my profile views went down. My inbound connection requests went down. Number two, my number of meaningful conversations went down. Number three. So when we think about content creation on this platform, it is not just about posting stuff on your own feed, right? It is commenting on other people's stuff. That's content creation as well. And we'll dive into a little bit about how to do that. Again, it's something we bring up all the time. And principle 3 is content fundamentally is about value shared in 10,000 ways. So content is not content's not just one thing. It is all about value. So I follow a bunch of SEO specialists out here on LinkedIn. I am not an SEO specialist. If somebody came to me and said, "Morgan, would you do SEO for me?" It's not for me. The reason I follow SEO specialists is also not to become a subject matter expert in SEO. It's just great for me to learn, to stay on top of the trends, to
Mhm.
understand that. And they're posting value for me out on their feeds. So I like and I comment and I engage on their stuff because I'm learning from them. But value is all about who's it for and what's it for. Who are you actually trying to reach and what is valuable to them? So for those SEO specialists, their audiences, me, and people like me. And the value is that I'm learning stuff from them about how to do better SEO or all the tips and tricks of the modern way. And that's true no matter what kind of content you post, right? Whether you're like us and we have a little Power Hour live show and we're doing repurposed content, or you're a sales professional and your company sells a super important tool, building value is demonstrating that in 10,000 different ways. Don't restrict yourself to one kind of content. Don't restrict yourself to one kind of posting or one kind of value delivery. It's time to experiment. Throw off your shackles and have a little fun. It's a big party out here, in case nobody told you. You're allowed to have fun on LinkedIn. So, um, anyways, those are 3 principles, Nick. Content is a tool, not the whole strategy. Commenting is content creation, and content is about value shared in 10,000 ways.
It's
Did you
interesting
have?
that from the
Yeah.
marketing from marketers, they say that content hear a lot of people say content is everything. But how could it be? In sales, it's all about strategic value conversations, the right information at the right time. Because really, in sales, it's change management. And is what you're selling worth the amount of change required to get the results from what you're selling? And it's hard to
Right.
say, but content can be a really good accelerator of that process if it's timely and it's respectful. But in sales, a lot of time, like me and Morgan were talking in the pre-show, a lot of my content is direct. And so posting content online indirectly to go and get people to come to me is very foreign.
Hmm.
And we might create one piece and send it out, whether it's an email, a LinkedIn DM, or back in the days of direct mail.
I love direct mail campaigns. Don't.
Yeah, and gifting still, like Alice, there's lots of
Oh,
relevance
totally.
still today, but there has to be a reason. And if we're going through this content creation and you have a proper account strategy and you're routing into those deals at the best place possible, what do they need to know?
Mhm.
What do they not know now that's going to separate them from where they are today to where they want to go? So just kind of keep it in the back of your brain as we're going through this. What are the experiments you need to run? What is that value that your customers need to hear to really understand where that comes from?
Mhm. Well, and that's interesting too, because I'm so used to the indirect approach in as a marketer. I'm so used to like, here's some value. If it's useful to you, come have a chat. And lots of content creation, whether you're commenting or you're actually posting out on LinkedIn, is indirect. It's not a direct, well, rarely is it a direct pitch. Like every once in a while, when it actually comes to the sale, influencers, other people will say, I've launched this, or I'm offering this, DM me, follow the link in comments, whatever. But as a percentage of content on my feed, it's probably less than 5%, less than 1%. So most content on this platform is indirect. It's people who are sharing value to their audience, and that's crucial because again, it's a tool. It's not the whole strategy. You have so many other ways to do direct approaches as well. You can still do direct stuff with comments or direct stuff with content, but you also have your DMs and you also have emails and cold calls and all the other stuff like you can make
It's all
offers
layered
with.
in.
Content is just a tool, right? It's one thing that you can use. Um, I have to say, though, I have to admit, I think the biggest roadblock, and we put this in the description, to creating content on LinkedIn is imposter syndrome
Hmm.
or sort of a variation of it. There's this beautiful book called The War of Art that Stephen Pressfield wrote. And in it, he names that little voice that we all have, the resistance. And the resistance is that little voice that says, "Nuh-uh, don't do it. Stay small. You don't need to post it. It's not good enough. You're going to embarrass yourself. It's not perfect. You shouldn't post it because you're not ready," right? Resistance is this little voice that keeps us all small and it fuels our imposter syndrome. And I struggle with this. I mean, I just want to be absolutely clear here. Nick, I think
Hmm.
we've talked about this before as well,
Yeah,
something that you've
absolutely.
worked with. And imposter syndrome basically asks, why me? And especially as you go through the feed and you see other people posting things, you're like, well, people can already, right? This is all the resistance. Well, people can already find the same value from somebody else. Why me? Maybe I'm an individual sales professional or I'm not a huge expert. I mean, in case you haven't figured out already, we're not high and mighty experts here on the B2B Power Hour. We're just people who like to experiment with stuff and learn from that. And we're sharing our earned wisdom here. But imposter syndrome focuses our attention on this. I shouldn't post because it's not perfect, because I'll be embarrassed, because it's risky, there's
I keep
uncertainty
comparing myself
involved.
to people that are 5 or 10 years ahead of where I am.
Right, it's that
Apples to
comparison
oranges.
game. They have 10,000 followers and they get dozens of likes every post. I'm putting out stuff that only gets 2 likes. What am I doing this for? All of that is this voice of resistance. So, there's sort of 2 ways I've learned. I'll share mine, and then Nick, I'd love to hear how you think about it. 2 ways that I've learned to deal with imposter syndrome. The first is just ship the work. Now, just shipping the work is harder done than said. But basically, write the post and click publish, or write the post, check for typos, and click publish. And if you need to do the little nervous scream, like, ah, as you click publish, do it. Like, just do it. Just continue to ship the work. Because the biggest lesson I've learned is that even today, 5 months in or whatever, of doing this live show and repurposing content and continuing to post is that voice is still here. And everything I've learned from people who are further down this path than I am, the voice is still there for them. So it's not about getting rid of the resistance. It's about having a conversation with it. And the best way to do that is just keep on shipping the work because you'll get better at being able to manage it. Now, if it's really loud, and it has been for me sometimes, and it's like, no, 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 don't do that. What I've learned is to say, hello, hello, resistance, or hello, imposter syndrome. What do you need? And this is like an internal conversation. And usually it needs to just be recognized. It needs me to know that I'm nervous or that I'm scared or that I'm uncertain or that this is risky or that I might be embarrassed. That's what it wants me to know. I say, okay, thank you. Yes, I am nervous or I am that this is risky or I am aware that this is, and then I still click publish. I'm like, let's go, right? Those are 2 ways or 2 tactics of dealing with imposter syndrome that are so crucial for me to continue pushing content out into the world. And we're going to get into the tactical stuff, but this is like the inner work, the mindset shift that's required, in my view, to create really good content. How about you, Nick? Do you have strategies for working with imposter syndrome?
Comment, show up consistently, and it's you always try your best. You always try to have the best conversation. And Seth Godin said, if you're going to keep waiting for that best post, you're going to miss it every time. And
Hmm.
you look at how much content we create. Out of every 100 pieces of content, maybe 5 are only really good. Everything else is okay. Some of it tanks.
Absolutely.
So nobody expects perfection. And if you do have a bad post, you know what happens? Nothing. Nothing happens.
Nothing.
Just move on. And I think that's, y- y- that's the hardest part is like thinking that there's a consequence to putting it out there, especially on LinkedIn. So many people look at it because it started out as that professional platform, and you got to put your best self forward, and everybody's comparing themselves. But what I did 2 years ago is nowhere near what I'm doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
There is somebody standing in your shoes 2 years ago that could learn from your experiments, can learn from your trial and error. And nobody expects you to be the expert. They just want value. And so one of the other things I realized is that as you're commenting, as you're continuing these conversations, you learn. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a beautiful thing when you can reference somebody in a piece of content and tag them, because it also gives you a lift. And it's a genuine compliment and it works. And so the more you experiment and the more you get out of that comfort zone to have that conversation, the more you find your style. Because if you look at any content creator that's doing incredibly well, they're unique. They've embraced themselves. That's a long process. We've been running
Mm-hmm.
the podcast now for what? Because we
I
also
mean, the
did,
podcast, few months, but the live show's been like, I don't know, August or September, I guess. Yeah.
and I sometimes only feel like we're just figuring it out now.
Totally, man.
Just about every week, because you learn so much by doing. So don't get in the way of learning. It's okay. If it's on a great
Well,
post, it's gone. It's gone.
yeah, it's gone. Yeah, nobody sees it. And actually, interestingly, I did this little poll this week. It didn't go super far, but I did get some good insights. I asked what would people like to see more of on LinkedIn, and long form content and some other stuff. The top ranked one was personal stories. People like, the thing we underestimate in the B2B world, especially, is that people want to hear about people. Now, the classic faux pas is sharing a picture of your sandwich as if it's Twitter in 2011. Okay, this is not LinkedIn. In 2021 or 22. Are we in 22? Oh God.
22.
Whew, uh, like, personal stories are still part of the value creation process, but the value to that person is connection, relationship, trust. It's not just what's in it for me, right? Value can be 10,000 different ways. It's different than just here's something for you. It's like, here's a story. Maybe this will help on your journey. So, speaking of styles, I think that there are 3 different styles of creating content out on LinkedIn. And I see this based on the people we follow, Nick, actually, and that we've had on our podcast and had discussions with and learned from.
So
One
true.
strategy is on the fly. You're building content on the fly. That is Nick's strategy. And it works great for you, right?
When I'm in the comments and I'm having all these conversations and I'm active in the community, I can
Yeah.
shoot from the hip because
Mm-hmm.
I've already practiced this conversation 5, 10, 20 times.
Mm-hmm.
But if I'm not as active, I have to go and change my strategy, which I believe you're going to be going to number 2.
Yep. But on the fly is you wake up and you write something interesting. All right. So no matter the
I try
strategy,
to.
or try to, you at least try to. Um, my recommendation, no matter what strategy you use, and this is from our honest experience, Nick, is choose a time that you'll post. Now, this may mean you post once a week, but you post once a week at that time. It just helps fight that resistance, because
And
it's
get an
not, oh, I need to
accountability
post this
partner
week.
too. Actually, I
Right.
have to
You
throw that
helped a
in, like
lot in
our
that. Oh,
experiment that we just did with us posting at the same time and then commenting. I was like, yo, it's good to have a comment on there and a like. And then I was thinking about it this morning and I'm like, man, I'm like, the kiddos like taking forever to get ready and like I'm not going to be able to post on time. And it's like that accountability partner at the gym.
mhm.
It's not necessarily you're not going to do it. It's that you're not going to show up for that person because they're waiting for you. They trust you and you made a commitment.
Yeah. And that accountability helps so much no matter what you're doing, but especially if you're building out on the fly. If you're just writing stuff on the fly. Now, here's the thing. This works exceptionally well for Nick Bennett. And Nick, he has like 30,000 followers or something on LinkedIn,
And
but he's
growing.
and growing. And he's been very clear. He just wakes up and writes something interesting on his mind. So it works great whether you have a small audience or a big audience. It's just, is that your strength? And for Nick, it is. For me, I prefer strategy 2, which is built out in advance. Now, I don't actually build out a lot of content in advance. I think sort of the OG player in this is Justin Welsh, and he
Mm,
is 100,000 followers. I mean, something ridiculous in terms of reach on LinkedIn. But
150 or something.
yeah, he builds out almost all of his content in advance. For me, I build out the week. I don't do the month. The month is a little too much for me because I don't have that much time to write all of that content all at once. But I
Things also
try to do,
change.
and things change. And so I build out a week in advance. And that's, you use a tool like Buffer or Hootsuite or one of them to schedule out your content at that same time whenever you want to post. And whether you're doing it on the fly or built out in advance, it doesn't, I mean, I think you and I both recommend maybe posting at least once a week if you're actually posting stuff on your feed. But like Nick and I post Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And you've even been experimenting with Sunday recently. So you don't have to go all guns out blazing all at once. In my experience, it's better to stay consistent in whatever schedule you choose instead of trying to max it out at the beginning. So if that means that you're posting Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday, that's all that you need to do. And you can build that out in advance on a Monday, or you could write it on the fly. But it's important. It's, for me, 7:45 in the morning. I have to post something. I have to ship something. And that fights the resistance. It fights that imposter syndrome because it's like I told Nick I'd be posting 7:45 in the morning. I gotta post, right? Um, Strategy 3 is sort of can be blended in whatever you're doing, but it's a different approach, which is repurposing content. And
Mhm.
this is underestimated because you can repurpose all kinds of stuff. If you're a sales professional at a company, you can repurpose your marketing team's blog posts on your site, right? You're not going to copy paste. You're going to take the message, simplify it, condense it, maybe change it around into something valuable. That's what Laura Erdem does at Dream Data. She was on our podcast. She's like, when I run out of content ideas, I go take a look at what my marketing team has put out on the blog and I go, oh, that's really good. And then takes a little segment of it, simplifies it, and
Love it.
posts it on our feed. Isn't that great?
And people come from your voice, your curation
Yes.
of the same message, so it makes sense, and, you add your personality to it, which one thing I will say, like, shooting from the hip,
Mm-hmm.
when I go and edit too much, I edit out personality.
Same.
If you read your writing and it's really dry, there's no humor, there's no sense of personality, it's hard for people to go and really grasp that unless it's super, super high value and relevant. They'd rather hear it in their own words.
Yes.
Like customer interviews or even asking like, "Why did you decide to do this now?" Like take notes or record calls as get their permission, but record
Of course.
calls and pull out different phrases and use it.
Well, and actually, that's interesting. Candace had recommended that in her conversation because she was taking like customer interviews and then just anonymizing the insights. So the other day, I talked with software engineer in California. No company mentioned, no kind of industry mentioned, just like a position. And here's what I learned: 3 key insights, couple hashtags, post. That's repurposed content. You're sort of doing the work all you're doing the work already. You don't need to make your life harder, and we do that too. We repurpose some of the insights in from these live shows or from our podcast into content that we're using because we're sort of blending some of these approaches because we continue to experiment and see how it all works. um
Lydia had a good
oh
comment. Do you want to dive into that?
Lydia's.
Yeah.
Yep. Lydia asks, can you address the efficacy of posting more than once per day? My understanding is that LinkedIn ignores the earlier post. So I'm not 100% sure about whether it ignores the earlier post, but I have never seen good results from posting more than once a day.
Unless you
Um,
have a huge following
True.
and the following is in different time zones.
Hmm.
But Nick Bennett posts multiple times a day, but he has a big enough following where there are different types of posts, and sometimes it's humor, sometimes it's more value, and it really comes down to your following and if they're engaging. And I think they take it's like a TikTok approach to it, where if it doesn't get acceleration, like people aren't liking
Hmm.
it and they're just like glancing over it all the time, then they just hide it because it's not relevant.
Yeah,
Also, another reason
exactly.
why you got to connect with the right people.
Yeah. Exactly, exactly. And, yeah, that's couldn't have said it better myself. Alright, anything else that you wanted to add about the overall consistency or cadence, Nick, before we dive into different types of content?
No, people just learn to what to expect from you, what type of content, what tone of voice you use, how they can interact with you and have fun, or what they
Mhm,
can expect to learn. It's very
mhm.
simple. And then the only thing I would say is comment, but I'm sure we'll get more into that because
Oh,
it's really
yes.
underrated for how effective it is.
Absolutely. Alright, so this next section, disclaimer, is based exclusively on our experience. And actually, that's kind of fun because Nick and I every week are running experiments like this last week that I took off from commenting to see what that did to my profile views. And we've run different experiments and trying to get a handle on the LinkedIn algorithm. Our sort of uh, cadence or our sort of mixture is text posts do really well, although that might be changing a little bit. Posts with images do okay, although that might be getting better.
Yeah.
Videos don't get a lot of views, but get a lot of engagement. Polls are not as high reach as they used to be. Uh, Links, like not in a comment, but if you post something and it links and it has that link preview, our recommendation, just don't. It doesn't go anywhere. Uh, and
LinkedIn
articles,
snuffs it too.
yeah, it does. And I'll explain why in a second. Articles are sort of the long form content, maybe, but it's probably best suited to if you can produce sort of thought leadership content by yourself and not necessarily just like repurposing other content. So to sort of go through each of those in a little more detail, we've seen in these last couple of weeks a bit of an algorithm change um, when they updated their user interface
Even more than a bit.
where a little more than a bit actually, where text posts do not have as much reach as they used to. Now, that doesn't mean text posts are bad. It's just that compared to the last like 3 months of us doing text posts, in terms of views and engagement on those compared to where they have been these last couple of weeks, I'm not as impressed as I used to be. The most important thing in my view on text is that it's readable. So the classic LinkedIn influencer formula is like a sentence every line, which is frustrating, honestly, to like actually read through that. But if you need a good hook, you want somebody to be interested in that content, and then you want to make it readable. And I know Eddie's in the comments today, and this is something I've learned from him, especially on email or especially on text. Right? Think about the mobile experience. If somebody's on their phone scrolling LinkedIn, how easy is it for their brain to comprehend what's in front of them? And a little experiment I had run was I had like 5 or 6 text posts that had chunks of text, like proper paragraphs almost, and then I had 6 or 7 text posts that were far more readable. And those 6 or 7 performed a lot better. Not only did they get more views, they also got more engagement and more insight. And that's because as somebody's engaging on the platform, it's easier for them to sort of scan, read, and engage than it is to get into the dense paragraphs of content. Um, Images are sort of similar, I would say, although the image can be fun or funny or a little sketch or something. I actually kind of like the meme content that some sales professionals are putting out. I'm not a
That's
sales
good.
professional, but I know you really like that
Kinda give me
kind of content.
and actually, can I pull up Amy's comment? Because this actually
Oh,
applies
yes.
directly to it.
Yes. Amy asks, I see a lot of people posting personal content on LinkedIn. It seems to get a lot of traction. What are your thoughts? What are your
Most of it's a
thoughts, Nick?
story.
Hmm.
Everybody looks at B2B as business to business. It's not. It's person to person, but that person is accountable to a company, so they're for lack of better terms, they're trying to save their ass. And so they
Hmm.
gotta prove value. What's the value they bring to the company? But with personal stuff, it's telling a story. It's easy to relate to. It's highly relevant. Most content on LinkedIn isn't relevant,
Hmm.
or at least to the majority of people, and that's okay. But a lot of these personal stories, like being a parent or missing a bus or the hero's journey, there's a reason why Disney goes to these stories all the time for their frameworks. It's because they work. It's easy for us
Hmm.
to relate, and it plays on our loss aversion and our desire to better ourselves. So it's good to have personal content. It also adds more depth to who you are. I think that's why Nick Bennett, Will Allred, so many people have, or Gary Vaynerchuk, when he actually dives in to let people into his life, because it makes you real. It gives people something that they connect with. I don't know, I didn't hide it, but I just never talked about, I competitively brew. I'm a home brewer.
Hmm.
And it's funny, every once in a while, I'll get a message like, "Hey, I was listening to something and I heard that you brew. Tell me about that." It's like, sure. But it's because it's
Sure.
relevant
Yeah.
to them because they're either interested or they do it too. And
Hmm.
so this is why it's also good to change your content up with personal stories and display more of who you are, because it makes you more interesting. When you step into a boardroom and you have, a little bit of chatter, somebody's like, "Hey, how's it going? What have you been up to?" "Good." "Yeah, okay." Doesn't make you
Hmm.
likable, which brings down that trust score. So, a
And
lots of
that's what I
trust.
was about to say. Like, and I know we'll expand on this in a second, but like, content is about trust. Value in 10,000 ways is not about direct response value. It's not, here I have this thing I want to sell you. I want you to pay attention to me because I can teach you whatever. It's like, they're people. Like, how would you approach this if you were in an actual networking conversation? And those are terrifying for some people, so maybe that's not the best example, but if you're actually in a room with someone, are you going to approach them and say, I woke up at 4 a.m. this morning and I showered, and the classic influencer post of like, look at me, how good I am. Like, that's going to rub people the wrong way, and it does, and it gets traction for its own reasons on a platform like ours. But I always think about building relationships, building trust, and personal content is a way to build a relationship and to build trust, because you're more than a business, you're more than a position. Like, for me, the stories that get told allow us to connect with someone on a personal level, so that when their stuff comes up again, our brain makes a little connection. It says, I like this person, I want to pay attention to this person. And that's one from more than just 10 SEO tips and tricks for this week. Like, yeah, that's useful, but in my experience and the people that I like to follow and engage with, I love to see and hear stories about their life. Um, and of course, like, we're not on 2011 Twitter. Like, you don't need to post a sandwich and tell us a story. Post a picture of your sandwich and tweet it. Like, that's not. That's sort of the opposite end of the spectrum here as well.
Yeah,
That's more performative.
pretend your customer, your target
Hmm.
persona, is your best friend. Now post.
Hmm.
You're going to protect them. You're going to care about them. You're also going to take out the fluffy bullshit.
Yeah.
Like,
Heck
nobody
yeah,
goes
man.
and calls their friend. You're like, "Hey, like, this great new product just came out, and like, we're like really pumped to go and sell you." You call your friend, and it's a different tone of voice. It's a different interaction. It's a different play on value and urgency and fun. And that's what makes all this work, is when people can trust you. So post like you're talking to your best friend. See how it changes your style.
Yep. Yeah, and video is a huge way to access this. Speaking of content types, video puts a face to a name. It also puts a tone of voice to a name. It puts a personality to a name. Like, I think humor is fairly difficult to get across right in text, and like, I've experimented with it, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. It requires a lot of ellipses and emojis and all sorts of stuff to try and communicate it right, so people don't think you're actually being funny. But if you instead watched a video of us screwing around, and if you pull up some old live shows, we're wearing ornaments. I have multiple pairs of glass. Like that sort of stuff communicates to you personality more than an individual text post. So one thing I've seen like Will Aitken succeed really well with, because he's big on TikTok, he's just repurposing TikToks and putting them on LinkedIn. Now, you don't have to become a TikTok expert. The principle is the video, not and the content of the video, not that he's on TikTok. It's that he's repurposing stuff, and he's providing value, he's providing a laugh, or he's providing something interesting that engages with him as a person, as a personality, and allows us to build a relationship to that person without necessarily meeting them in person. And that's why video is really powerful, even though in our experience, the views don't get us as many. I mean, we get good engagement, but in terms of like overall, I don't know, views and impressions, they're pretty low compared to the other formats, which is fine. There's different ways of engaging.
Can I bring up
Um,
Lydia's comment for?
oh, yes. Lydia asks, what's your advice for people who aren't comfortable talking about their personal lives? Can I tell a story really quick?
Yes, please.
So I would say I'm definitely not uh, somebody who shares a ton about my personal life. But the difference is not the point of a story is, in my experience, not. Um, I just saw Lydia's comments about our quaffs. Wow. Sorry, folks. I think it's about telling stories in your life. Like one of my best early posts was telling a story about a local chicken sandwich shop. That's
Great
personal content.
story.
That has nothing to do with my business. I was just like, look, this is a great story about customer service. And they just killed it. And if you want it, DM me, right? I'll find it for you. But basically, this local chicken shop just had a great customer service experience. And I said, what a great story. Let me just write up this quick story and share it out. That to me is borderline personal life content because the story is told, I was visiting this local chicken sandwich shop. Here's what happened to me. It has nothing to do with business. It has nothing to do with value provision. It's just like, oh, this happened to me. So there's different ways, I think, to access those personal stories that isn't like, here, let me tell you about my mom. Or like, here, let me tell you about my family, or anything that's a little more intimate. Like, that's not necessarily the expectation. It's just stories about what's going on in your life that isn't just directly related to your business. Do you have anything to add, Nick?
Yeah. You can also just add personality to your posts, whether it's your tone of voice in your video or let your quirks show, whatever you're doing, right? And so you got to really understand, like, who's your audience? Are you talking to peers or are you talking to your customer? What type of customer? How specific are we getting? And how deep are we getting into their everyday to provide them real value? And so you can just talk about that all day long and people will be happy with you. But the more humor, the more you that you insert into it, the more people will come back because you're unique. You have a new take.
Mhm.
They might love your dry sarcasm. Mine apparently they don't. But and maybe too, like, I've seen some people that do some killer illustrations. I wish I had those skills, but I don't.
Mm,
And so it's figuring out your strengths, finding a
mhm.
way that works. Originally, me and Morgan found it easier to just talk on a show instead of trying to write out really structured content. And then we cut it up with a great software called descript.com. Amazing. And then
Amazing.
that was it. And then
Yeah.
we started experimenting with, do we write a little bit of text with it? What do we do? But it was just simple, and we've just tried new things over time, and we just find that the more personality that we put in and the less we hide back,
Mhm.
the better the relationships get. Maybe we don't get as many, comments, but the DMs that we get are worth
The DMs we get are definitely worth it. Oh yeah, 100%.
it.
Um, do you want to tell the little hack you've done on polls recently, which is very interesting?
So people, when you say something that's too obvious, people are like, "Yeah, I've heard this one before."
Mhm.
I've realized that you can get really nitty gritty with a poll because it gets into psychographics. So do people like me think like this? People like me do things like this. Like, give them a binary choice. There's only A
Mhm.
or B. Are salespeople born or made?
Mhm.
But what I realize is some people want to stay part of that. They want to be part of that community, but they don't want to pick because it's so controversial. So let them opt in. So what I've started doing is show me the answer. But what it teaches me is some people are really curious. Like, I had a poll that went crazy that was on what is
Mhm.
an acceptable closing rate. And I realized from that poll that it was a really deep, dark gray area that was a sliding scale of whatever was convenient to the
We did
person
a
that was
whole
telling
live
the
show.
story. Yeah.
We did a whole live show on that. Yeah, it was crazy.
So
But it
it
was a huge
works.
percentage that responded to show me the answer because they wanted to know what other people were saying.
51%, I would have lost over 25,000, 30, probably more because it wouldn't have got the traction it did because it picked up fast for a Sunday poll.
Mhm.
Sunday
Right, and
poll.
and it seems recently the algorithm has sort of demoted polls compared to where, I think Will Aiken's famous poll is, "Do you want more polls? Poll, 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 poll."
Yes,
Like,
poll.
there's
Yes, poll.
yes, poll. And, like, it definitely was abused for a long time. But for me, they're really useful market research things. I've learned a lot by asking questions I'm genuinely interested in from the audience that we seek to serve, to see what they're saying, and then use that as the respondents as follow-up questions and follow-up conversations to now, mind you, if you have one like Nick's poll where you got in front of, I don't know, 60,000 people or whatever, it's a little hard to do all the follow-up work on that. But for something that's yeah.
It's a couple weeks of work.
Yeah, no kidding. But for something a little more intimate, it can at least spark conversation with sometimes second degree or third degree connections of like, I saw you respond to this poll and I wanted to ask you a couple more questions, or I was really wanted to know more about your perspective. I had a lot of great conversations off of a poll I did about creating content actually as a sales professional. The reason that I don't like links is it's the old principle that if you're trying to shotgun content across your platforms, you're not going to succeed. And this is a very 2010 playbook. But what used to happen for the uninitiated was somebody, a marketer or a social media coordinator, would create a blog post for SEO purposes, and then they would schedule it inside something like Hootsuite to just post a link with a short caption on every conceivable social platform.
This makes me
And
think of the thing that, like, the older generation won't understand, but the
oh
older
yeah,
generation will understand, but the new won't, the dial-up modem.
the
This is like the
dial-up modem.
dial-up modem of content.
Totally though, and it worked. That was what was crazy. It worked for like 6 months or a year. And then the algorithms got smarter and realized that scrolling through a feed that was exclusively links didn't keep people on the platform. That's why they demote them, because they want you to stay on the platform. So if you're sharing links, we always do a link in comments below. Like, we have a company page for this and we promote excerpts from our podcast. And instead of we share a little video excerpt, and then we put the links in the comments below. So if there's something to a link, you should just post it in the comments. It shouldn't be the main post, because the post will get demoted in the algorithm because they want people to stay on the platform.
Mhm.
All right. I think that's all types of content. That's all I want to say about that. I think it's best to spend the last part of our time thinking about value and how to create content, and like, what do you actually say? What do you actually do? Why are you doing this? Because it's the key, the golden little nugget on what makes content work. And if you'll allow me to kick this off,
Let's do it.
I think content is about trust at scale. Because in my view, there's really only two ways to build trust. There's sort of an indirect version where people get to know you and get to know your value through your content, or
Lurking in
through
the
direct,
background.
right? Or yeah, lurking in the shadows, right? Um, or having one-on-one conversations. The problem is that, obviously, and Nick, you know this as a sales professional, the best way to create value is through one-on-one conversations. Obviously, right? It's building trust, it's building relationships. People get to, it's that human factor,
The true personalization.
the true personalization. The problem is we only have so many hours in a day. We can only have so many conversations. And on top of it, I'm an introvert, so I just burn out quickly doing that. Like, I need
Now
days to
the truth is
recharge.
coming out after he does his comments and he disappears for, like, 6 hours. You're like, "Are
I'm
you
like,
okay?" "I'm in
sorry.
meetings."
No, 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 no. I truly, like, after a big conference or after a big event, I really need time to recharge. So for me, building relationships one on one has never been a scalable solution. But for most people, it's not a scalable solution. So how do you build trust before they ever talk to you? Or how do you build trust without ever talking to you? And that's through content. And that's through content as comments, content as comments that are questions, content as things that you're posting. It's all about building a relationship, building trust. If you one of the questions that I ask in branding workshops and positioning workshops that I do is, after they figure out their exact clients that they really want to work with, I would say, if you only had to select a couple of them, like 3 of your 5 actual real people that you want to work with, and you had an hour to spend with them, what would you do? Would you teach them something? Would you work with them on something? What do you want them to know? What do you want to provide to them that's really high value so that they trust you, so that there's a relationship there? That question fuels so much of the content that I write. Because for me, it's asking, what is valuable? How do I want to approach this room of people? Because at the end of the day, LinkedIn's just a very, very big algorithmically determined room. And we have this opportunity to build trust and relationships with folks. And so our content should be about providing value in that time that we have together. Value as stories, value in 10,000 ways, value as stories, value as videos, value as insights, value as experiments, failures. Oh my God, the amount of earned wisdom we have from doing things wrong, like not promoting our podcast for 2.5 months. Who knew? Who knew you should promote your podcast?
Morgan, we screwed up.
Yeah,
We
we
screwed
screwed up.
up.
Time after time, like we just like don't. It's okay to not do it right. That's what we're saying. But ultimately, you have this opportunity. What do you want them to know? And Nick had asked us earlier in the show, which was the sort of strategic question you've posed to me before, which I've loved, is what are the 10 things they should know before they talk to you?
Yeah, and a lot of that is change management.
Hmm.
And this is, I think, where the biggest misconception in sales right now is that too many people look at it as transactional, and some of it can be if it's a commodity, or if you treat it as a commodity, then you're selling yourself short. But it's change management. There's certain changes in their day to day that need to happen for them to use your product well.
Hmm.
How can you go and explain that using stories? How can you take your customer's own words and turn it into a post? The the more client meetings I do, the easier it is for me to create content, because then I'm not recreating the wheel. I'm just sharing what I've been told. The hardest thing, and I think I see this a lot on LinkedIn, and it's kind of sad because you want to talk to people about it because it's a great topic, and you realize that it's not earned wisdom. They've memorized something out of a book and then they parrot it out to everyone else, like we've seen with a lot of the podcasts that we love.
Yeah.
And it has no depth or meaning to them because they don't actually understand it and they've never applied it. But
Mhm.
when you're talking to customers, they're telling you stuff because they trust you, or you've raised a good question that gets inside their heads and into their day to day. That's great content. And I saw a
Great
company
content.
that whenever they sign a competitor or sign a company that has like a good list of competitors, what they do is they turn it into either a case study or they'll watch the discovery calls to see why they met with them. They'll turn it
Mm.
into strategic content pieces, and then they turn it into a content campaign that they send out to their top 3 to 5 competitors. And they can usually book at least 1 to 2 meetings from it.
Absolutely.
And so you don't have to get super creative. Like you don't have to go way outside the box. It's just
Mm.
really getting in. I think Margot Aaron said it really well. You got to write copy that's so good that it's invisible because it's conversations they're already having with themselves, but you're continuing on. God, it's really hard to go and book meetings with cold calls. Man, I feel like all my emails are just like, getting lost in the black abyss. I
Mhm.
feel like my content I'm creating just doesn't go anywhere.
Mhm.
Okay, continue that.
Mhm.
What's the rest of that thread? Create it.
Mhm.
Have
And just
fun.
add your perspective, because if you're like me, hearing what Nick just said, the little voice, that resistance pops up and says, well, you don't have really a unique perspective to add on this. That's not the point. That's the resistance. You do have a unique perspective. It's your perspective. Your perspective and your value could sound like somebody else you follow, but maybe the people that follow you don't follow them. That's okay. Just continue that conversation. Extend that value. Start matching that in marketing speak, matching that internal narrative of your audience, right? Championing it, being able to say, yeah, I experienced that too. Here's what I did.
Makes me
Actually,
think
I've
of
seen some,
wrestling, like the
yeah,
people's champion do
the
do do
people's.
do comes out, and he's like, and I honestly think that's why Nick Bennett has
Yep.
grown so fast, so quick, because he's not pulling punches, he's not hiding from the fact. He's just
Mm-hmm.
telling the real deal, helping people go through what he's gone through or what he's seeing. It
Mm-hmm.
works. And like
Do you want to
Chris
pull it?
says,
Oh,
sell
yeah.
like a content marketer, market like a salesperson.
Just about to say that. Yep.
It's gold. Thanks, Chris.
Yes.
Absolutely. I will throw in the caveat of a content marketer that has met a customer or at least
Well,
knows what
I mean, the classic faux pas of not actually ever having talked to customers. Do you want to throw up Lydia's question really quick? Because this is a good one. I saw
Oh,
Eddie had commented on it really quick. Lydia had asked, how about posting
sorry.
from your company and sharing as an individual? Agreed with what else was in the comments. It doesn't get as much traction. Now, why
Why?
is a good question. It's something we've experimented with a little bit, and we've had guests on the show that get tagged in our company page updates, and then the difference in traction from them literally posting the same content with a different caption, like the same video with their own fuel versus just resharing what somebody else posted, doesn't get as much traction. Do I know why? No. Is it super important? Oh, Nick, do you know?
Psychology. Think about it.
Oh,
People like look at how many times you go on Sales Nav and you go and sort by people that are posting, go on homepage, sort by lead lists, and you look
mhm,
at
mhm.
the garbage that they just reshare.
Dead
People
on.
follow your
Just
company if they want your company. People follow people because they're interesting. If you're not adding your own 2 cents or you're not adding like some type of point of view, what's the point of that post? The
right.
algorithm drops it because it doesn't scale quickly and it sees that it just drops. It also is redirecting to a different page, so it's going to pull them out of the algorithm. So there's part of that too, but you got to look at the human interaction, the trust, and what you want from it. So if you're
Mhm.
posting, like, look at all of the B2B Power Hour posts that took off, and you see lots of
Mhm.
comments and engagement. Look at how it got shared. When they share, when Eddie shared, when Will
Mhm.
Allred shared, they shared,
Mhm.
but they added their own point of view on top. It's like content stacking. You're continuing the conversation, you're threading. So every additional piece adds more value, and all of it comes together to be one hell of a read. The problem is, people are just blankly resharing and they're selling themselves short because they're not adding their unique twist. And so,
I didn't even put that together. That's just brilliant. True, because if I followed somebody who only reshared stuff from other pages, I would not follow that person. It's true. It's like, why am I following you? You don't add anything unique. I should just follow these other people or follow the company pages if I'm interested. Dead
makes
on,
me think
Nick.
of your dad. What do you
Oh,
do? What do you do? What do you do?
the classic networking question. What do you do? It's like a parrot. That's the joke. What do you do? What do you do? It's like, oh, shut up. I don't want to. No, I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah, and Eddie,
Um.
awesome hook to start. You have to give
Yep.
them a reason to read.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, building threads like Twitter, Lydia.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I actually think this is going to get bigger now that people are posting more videos and people are doing this on TikTok. So it's becoming
Mm-hmm.
more common practice that we're going to see this, and it's I hopefully it won't be the one up scenario, but I think that
Mm.
there's a lot of content where the content creator had a specific target that they wanted to hit, and you can respectfully continue.
Yes.
And I think this is going to be something fun. And I don't know if it's going to be something that's got done more with videos, but I think it's going to be mainly just text, text at
Mm-hmm.
scale.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and honestly, if I only had a layer to kind of formalize this, if we wanted to get formal about it, is did you like that? The You should probably have an objective in creating content. Now, that objective can be lots of different things,
But I
and
have a
value can be
budget.
shared in 10,000 different ways. But are you so for us, the reason or for me, the reason that I create content is that I'd love to build a community of peers. That's why I'm doing this. I want to be connected with other marketing and sales people who are learning in their own ways so I can learn from them and they can learn from me, right? That's why I create content. That's the goal of my content creation and why this live show exists too. We're like, hey, want to start talking about this? But other people, and I follow some, their goal is to generate demand. Their goal
Every
is to
day I'm
build revenue.
hustling, hustling,
Yeah.
hustling.
Their goal is to create visibility for their own profile. And you know those influencers when you see them because it's all about them. And for some people that works. Like for me, it doesn't work. So it's always for an audience and there's always some sort of objective. Now, of course, we'd all like to be famous. Maybe. Not all of us. Maybe a little bit famous. But it's so much better in my experience, and our experience, I'd say, to have a couple thousand or a few thousand, or even from some of the larger accounts, 10,000 people who follow you, who are actually interested in what you do, instead of having tens of thousands of people who just follow you and they don't engage. Like, not getting so wrapped up in those numbers is really important
Like
because
old school
for
or
me,
Twitter, where people would like fluff up their numbers and then
oh,
unfollow everybody, so it
oh my
looks so.
God.
Look at, I have 10,000 followers.
It's like, come on,
Effing
man.
narcissists.
It's just no.
Indeed.
That's a great comment, Lydia. But the point of the objective is just to stay consistent. It's just to say, you know what? And I had this the other week. I posted a text post, went nowhere. I think it has like 180 views or something like that, which is not great. And it has 2 likes or something like that. You know what? It's still
One was
up.
me.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the other one was Nick. Like that's how far it went. Oh boy. But the point of it that is it's just one post. It goes away. It's no big deal, right? And then you can post another thing. And I posted, I think literally the day after, I posted something that reached like 5,000 people, which is pretty good. So, like, being able to focus in on a particular audience, understand the value, deliver that value in
Hmm.
10,000 ways, and also know it's all long game and the day to day is kind of important, but not super important, is fine. Like, that's the magic. That's how you build relationships, build trust in the long game.
You can still win in the short game.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
Well, and so I want to add this in because we didn't talk about it, but one of the most beautiful things you can do right now is unexpected value.
Mm,
It's not new. So you get a DM and somebody's just chatting with you, and Morgan has a good story of this,
mhm.
and I know a few other people have actually brought this up because we've mentioned it on the show before. But what are they struggling with? What is something in their day to day? Maybe they just got a new puppy, and you can hear the frustration in their voice because it is, everybody's at home and it's terrorizing them. Maybe send them, something, a friend that has a really well behaved dog. Hey, this is the book that they use to go and really help them out. Hopefully, hope it works for you. Or it doesn't have to always be work, but it's what is the friction in their life that you can help with? What is that blank spot that they need to fill? Do they want to learn more because they're going to get a promotion soon and they're worried about like that knowledge gap? Do they need to network with a few people because say they just moved to Denver or they just moved away from Denver and so now they need to go and connect with a few new people?
Hmm.
This is where sales can win quickly with content. And I've seen somebody do this and it was really, really good. They did a really deep discovery session with a customer, got into why change, and they really labeled why now. Why do they need to change now? And they turned it into a content piece, a pretty healthy, like long, like video and like text post. But what they did is they had a target account list of 5 to 10 people or 5 to 10 accounts, and they connected with them and sent it to them in a DM. You're like,
Nice.
so and so is dealing with this. I thought this would be highly relevant to what you're going through right now. Let me know. Wish you the best.
That's so good.
And I thought it was just freaking brilliant because not only is it indirect, but you're
Mhm.
making it direct by sending it to someone. J-Bay had this wicked episode. I sent it to you on
Yes.
prospecting, and I beautiful framework, really well demonstrated, great stories to back it up. And so I've been sending it to people with the timestamp. I'm like, listen from here. It's really good. And will it get me business? I don't really care.
No.
Maybe it does. But the point was
Mhm.
is I knew that some people were either struggling with it or it was an area of interest. So I fired it off. And
Yep.
so look for opportunities to fill a void with content at scale.
Mhm.
Okay, and I'm sure Eddie can talk about this, like with Vidyard videos and any of these services where you can save like FAQs. So you get these frequently asked questions, throw it into a video format, send them to people. Like I now send people podcast episodes instead of answering the same questions over and over because Will Allred explained email a hell of a lot better than I ever could.
Yep.
So why would I go and take away from that and pretend?
Mhm,
Because now we
mhm,
have a
mhm,
resource. So build
mhm,
your resource library. Eddie has a good way of doing it too. He puts it into bookmarks and then
mhm,
categorizes all of his into different bookmarks and he'll send the bookmark.
mhm.
So little goes a long way and it doesn't always have to be just the long game.
Nope. Well, we are at the end of this power hour. I feel like we could probably go for at least another 2 or 3 rounds. Thank you to everyone who's here joining us. Quick offer before you hop off. We've been hosting little workrooms for folks to work on specific skills, just because we like to have fun. And it's sort of a format like this, but it's live and in a Zoom room. It's on Monday. Nick, what are we working on Monday?
Email sequences. We're getting to the
Email
bare bones
sequences.
of what works, what doesn't, and why 1,000 random email addresses in your sequences just doesn't work. But it's all activity based. Learn by
Yeah.
doing, and you
Hmm.
get to hear other people voice the questions that you're probably saying in your own head. So
Hmm.
it's a safe place to be honest and learn.
So if you're interested, shoot us a DM. We'd love to have you there, and I hope you join. So
Yeah.
thanks for joining on this Friday for this B2B Power Hour. Nick, any closing words?
Thank you so much as always. We really appreciate you, especially spending this whole hour with us, contributing with all your comments. And we really love seeing your comments and your faces pop up with your profiles week after week. It means a lot. And we can't wait to go and announce what's next week. So if you have any ideas, shoot me a DM or Morgan.
Yep. Send it
Wish
our
you guys the
way.
best.
Yes. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Happy Friday. Happy selling.